Sea monsters have been spotted throughout time and across cultures. They might look like a giant octopus or like a prehistoric dinosaur, whereas others might resemble beautiful women luring sailors to their doom. I am fascinated with sea monsters. It started with an octopus. I made this painting in 2015. I wasn't sure what it was about. The tentacles of a giant kraken wrap around a girl, possibly pulling her under. The girl doesn't look too upset. Maybe the giant kraken was helping her? Probably not. She seemed resigned to her fate. I didn't think much about it, just a silly little painting I did to amuse my children. Fast forward to 2016. I was moving around a bunch of art in my office when I noticed a tiny painting I did with an art therapy group that I ran. The directive I gave was to paint on one side where you have been, and on the other side where you are now. I probably will need to explain some things about my history. In 2012, I was diagnosed with cancer. I likened my year of treatment as a journey into the underworld. I had so much taken from me in 1 year. I joked that I was poisoned, cut, and burned, but I was one of the lucky ones. I was able to leave the world of treatment, although I was a different person than the one who entered. As any cancer survivor will tell you, hearing that you are done with treatment is both wonderful and anxiety-provoking. My doctors told me that I just needed to be careful, pay attention, and if I see the signs that it may have returned, to let them know immediately. But I didn't have a great track record of letting people know how I was doing. By the time my cancer was diagnosed, it had grown to 7 centimeters across. Were there warning signs that I had ignored? My son was nursing when the tumor was discovered. I remember that he refused to drink from one side. Should I have been more curious? Should I have gone to the doctor more regularly? I remember telling my doctor that I was exhausted, but she reminded me that I was a working mom with 2 young children and that to be exhausted was normal. But still, maybe I wasn't paying enough attention. So back to that piece that I made with my group. On one side of the painting, I tried to depict my time with cancer. On the other side, I showed my heart healing and floating above the water. And just so you can get a visual, this is a cancer cell. As I was moving my art pieces around my office, I noticed the resemblance between the cancer cell and my octopus painting. Sometimes when my unconscious sends me messages, it can feel pretty overwhelming. It can often take a period of time before I actually receive the message. But this message was difficult for me to ignore. I saw the similarity, and the emotional center of my brain kicked into overdrive. Yes, I had unwittingly made another cancer painting. Carl Jung believed that the ocean and water was symbolic for the unconscious, those things hidden in the depth of our psyche. I remember as a young woman, I had always loved mermaids because I felt it was symbolic of my comfort swimming around in the deep end of my own unconscious. But sometimes, deep in the unconscious, there are monsters, dark and mysterious, large but unseen. And when you are not looking, they can emerge from the depth and throw your boat asunder. And sometimes you survive the wreckage, other times you don't. I needed to pay attention to my sea monsters. One thing I have learned from scary movies is that it is when everything is still that the monster attacks. I believe that is maybe why my life is a constant flux of too many appointments, ideas, and creative distractions. At other times it can feel like I pay too much attention, hypervigilant to any change in the current. Every small wave feels like the potential for disaster. My eyes constantly searching water too dark, looking for any sign of what might come. But bracing yourself 24 hours a day is exhausting, and a daily diet of stress hormones is definitely not good for cancer survivors. I recognized that I needed to make peace with my sea monsters. So I started encouraging them to show up in the art I was creating. I also always had a little boat to express the magnitude of the creature and the fear they could instill. no matter how silly the creature might appear. I'm not sure how it happened, but somewhere along the way, I became enchanted with sea monsters. They didn't feel as scary as they did before. They felt more alone in a world that might do them harm. At some point, I no longer felt that I was on the side of the little boat. My allegiances were with the sea monster. When I painted this large mermaid sea creature, I think I realized she was kind of a self-portrait. She'd been hurt. She was angry. She was also powerful. Maybe I became larger and more powerful than my problems. Maybe time had helped heal some of the anxiety that cancer left behind. I think that my changing relationship with sea monsters settled some battle that had been raging in my unconscious. Aside from adopting healthy habits and managing my stress, I have little control over my own mortality. But I do have control over how I show up, and I want to show up as powerful. An interesting side note is that krakens have the ability to regenerate limbs. It is for this reason that many consider them symbolic of infinity and life without end. Interesting that I had initially considered them symbolic of almost the exact opposite. And I am definitely not done painting sea monsters.